This video is made possible by Practical Defense Systems, the best online security training at the lowest prices. You can start your security career today online at pdsclasses.com. Check them out. Hi, I'm Joel Persinger. I'm the Gun Guy. Thank you very much for all of your support of GunGuyTV. I am extremely grateful. Look, before I get started with the interview, I am trying to get GunGuyTV to 250,000 subscribers on YouTube, 10,000 subscribers on Rumble, and honestly, the newest of the list here I'm very excited about is Twitter. We're uploading videos directly to Twitter now, so you can watch GunGuyTV right there in your feed. So if you haven't followed me on Twitter, I urge you to do that. This is the second segment of the interview I did with Rick Travis from the California Rifle and Pistol Association and Sam Paredes from Gun Owners of California. Given what we learned about Senator Wiener and other people like that, and the fact that the deck seems to be kind of stacked against us in Sacramento, I was wondering if it was even possible to gain a victory there. So I asked a question. I think you're going to be very encouraged to hear the answer. Rick, you mentioned something. You said moderate Democrats. In today's world, I mean, those almost seem mutually exclusive. And so I'm curious now, and feel free, guys, either one of you, has the landscape changed a little bit in Sacramento, or are we still dealing, because the Democrats have a majority regardless. I don't know if they still have a super majority, but they have a majority. But has the attitude changed with any of the people on the Democratic side where firearms are concerned in the last election?
When I say a moderate Democrat, I'm usually referring to, as Sam knows, a Democrat that does have a firearm, does use it at some point in the space, does exercise part of their Second Amendment rights, may not agree with us on everything, and they generally will either vote for those things that they do believe in, or they won't vote at all. And then things that they don't believe in, that Sam and I do and fight for, they often vote against us, but they're moderate. They're not where a Wiener, there is no way we're ever going to get a vote ever in our space that goes in the right way. But we have some Dems on some issues will vote for us, or actually on the last night of 9/18 and I want to say 2271. I'm not sure if that's what they passed here, but we had several Democrats that not only didn't vote to pass either one of those, but they got fellow Democrats not to vote. And that's how it didn't get passed. And I think a lot of people don't realize that it wasn't just the Republicans voting. In fact, there were a couple of Republicans that unfortunately didn't vote either. And you sit there at the end of the night and go, like, what's wrong with you? But
is the landscape even favorable in Sacramento, regardless of whether there's a D or an R behind the person's name, allowing us to do any more than just hope that we block some bills?
That's a great question, and let me answer it in a couple of parts. Number one, a lot of the victories that we gain in the legislature are because we know the process, we know the rules, we know the deadlines, the timeframes. We talk to the staff, and because we know the rules oftentimes better than the members do themselves, we are able to get victories that have nothing to do whether this is a bad bill or this is a good bill. It's because we were able to generate a situation where they couldn't get beyond the rules in order to move their legislation forward. So having professionals like myself and Rick and Dan Reed in the Capitol, talking to people, getting behind the scenes and understanding the process is the first thing that we have to do. And that's how we gain a lot of our victories. And we have to do that. And that only comes from experience. You know, it was a wonderful thing to have the CRPA day up at the Capitol and having them talk to people and talk to somebody other than us professional lobbyists, which oftentimes gives them a new perspective. But we still have to understand that process. That's what we get paid for by our supporters, is to know the process so that when the opportunities present themselves, we can kill bills because we know the process. Secondly, It's that we won't quit. We're worse than cockroaches in the kitchen that you try to stomp out. 9/18 last year was a artful thing of beauty. It only happened because of the team that we had, the work that we put in all year long with Dan Reed, Rick Travis, and myself, to stage for the last night of the legislature after the clock had struck midnight. We knew this was a 2/3 bill, which meant that it did not have to comply with the hard stop on the clock for all legislation. But we were there until after 1 o'clock, and we were able to talk with our friends and create a situation where they encouraged the Democrats who were not happy with this bill to stay strong, even though the Attorney General was on the floor twisting arms, even though Anthony Anti-Gun Portantino was on the floor trying to twist people. They were so arrogant. They were absolutely sure that they were going to get this thing passed with a 2/3 supermajority, so it would become law upon the governor's signature. But because of the work that we did and the willingness to stay in and do what needed to be done and to figure out ways of creating stumbling blocks for them and then sticking to those things that we learned, we were able to defeat it. This year, they're not going to try to do it with a 2/3 supermajority because they now know that they cannot count on all of their Democrats to support them in a supermajority to get this stuff passed. So, and that only came because we kicked their cans last year, and they learned a very big lesson that we know what we are doing. Sometimes it has nothing to do with the legislation. Sometimes it has to do with knowing that there are going to be some members absent because they're ill or they have a family member that's ill, and it creates a favorable situation for us on votes. That's part of the professional process that and wisdom that we bring to the table, and that's why we have been successful. Don't get me wrong. This legislature can pass anything they want. They have a supermajority, and certainly with the 50% plus one, they can pass whatever they want. And they are inviting us to challenge them. And in every committee, we remind them, we are challenging all of these types of laws throughout the country. And guess what? We are batting 1,000. We are crushing these kinds of concepts in this court and that court and this court. And it's coming here to a theater near you in California if you continue to do that. And by the way, thank you for paying the bills for our attorneys when we win these things. And I can see the staff members on committee talking to the legislature. No, they're not. No. They know full well that we've got the upper hand. And then when we haven't been able to stop something, it's working with the 2A Law Center, Michelle and Associates, and Gun Owners of America, Gun Owners Foundation, those teams that are FPC, Second Amendment Foundation, everybody who files lawsuits here in the state of California, and then us teaming together to make sure that those lawsuits are rock solid. And as you know, we're waiting for Roger T. Benitez, judge, to release his rulings on some of the 3 most important gun control laws in the state of California, and that's just the beginning. So, being in the arena fighting is super important.
Before we go on too much, I want to ask you something because this is a big deal. You've mentioned Dan Reed a number of times, and he is with the NRA, unless I'm mistaken. And the NRA, as we all know, without getting into it, has been taking a beating for quite some time. And sometimes from me, as a matter of fact, but I won't get into it right now. And the number of people who've told me the NRA does nothing in California is quite significant. I've said it myself, and yet now both of you have now mentioned this gentleman, Dan Reed. So tell me a little bit about Dan Reed. I think it might be encouraging for gun owners to know that sounds like NRA is doing something in California. Who is Dan Reed and what is he doing?
Rick, go ahead and start.
Yeah, Dan is an incredible ally. He's a part of our team. We both depend on him. I mean, there are situations where it's very tough because of everything the NRA has done positively and some things not so. That when Dan sometimes walks in a room, it's not the best day in the neighborhood, especially in our capital. But one of the things I think is remarkable is Dan finds other ways. He goes in the background. He works the back halls with us. He does things. There are times he looks at the two of us and says, it's better it comes out of your mouths than my mouth, because we might have a chance to get a wedge in. And something that Sam brought up that I think is important to understand this space, members come and go. I mean, I learned this back in the 90s when I was doing some work in the Capitol. Started later doing some of the stuff than Sam, who's done it his entire life. But the staff is forever. There are staff literally that I know, Sam knows this, I know this. It's the third generation from the same family.
So I want to make sure, Rick, I'm sorry to interrupt. I want to make sure I understand what you're talking about. When you say members come and go, you're talking about members, you're talking about legislators, senators, and assembly members. They come and go, but are you saying that their staff remains and it just keeps,
their staff
they just stick around?
Yeah, that staff gets traded off. I mean, we have software that tells us every week there's staff that goes from this member's office, sometimes in one political party, to 3 new members' offices in other political parties. And so part of what we do professionally up there, and when Sam was talking about building relationships, is we educate staff. And so that is one of the things that you got to realize is we have some staff that, like Sam says, when he bludgeons them, which is fun to watch, with this is what the court case says, and so you're not going to lose it. That helps a great deal. Some of that staff, when we're like, really, you believe that? Why don't you come on out and see for yourself? And even in some of the government organizations that feed into the Capitol, like the Game Commission on the hunting side, we were able to take a member of Newsom's staff out hunting, and he actually came back afterwards and told the people in the anti-hunting movement, you're wrong, sit down, be quiet, and quit lying. I went out there. I saw for myself. This is absolutely false. Those are probably to a lot of our members a little victory, but that gentleman is now back on the Game Commission. He's still pushing back on, Center for Biological Diversity. It brings pre-written bills to the members to get them passed, PETA, et cetera. And one of the things that we've all seen in the past year is a lot of the anti-hunting and a lot of the anti-2A people have come together and co-testify for each other. And so putting those people down and educating that staff doesn't just have a benefit for this legislative session, it goes on. And that's where Dan Reed is critical for us, because Dan goes in, makes friends with people that not everybody likes Sam, not everybody likes Rick. There's different people that like different ones of us, and there's people that love all of us. And so it's using that network and being strategic about it that can make a big deal. And Dan is incredible. He's a California kid. He loves this state. He's got his family up here. He's incredibly loyal to the movement in this state.
Joel, I have to jump in here. I frankly don't care what's going on with NRA outside of California. I can tell you this: we cannot do what we do without Dan Reed's help and participation, and oftentimes leadership. He, an excellent lobbyist, an excellent source, and one that demands and commands attention when he speaks before the legislature. So for that, I am immensely grateful to NRA. He stands probably as one of the best NRA lobbyist representatives we've had in the state of California since I've been here in 1980. And there have been some very, very good ones, very good ones. Steve Helsley being one of them, who I would say is right there with Dan. But Dan is kudos. He's a brother. He totally gets it. He does not believe in compromise. And he brings the weight of the National Rifle Association to bear in the legislature, in elections and things. And we cannot do what we do without him. We would be diminished, and that is not an option here in the state of California. So this young man, I am immensely grateful for. Oftentimes, Rick has pointed it out in the past, we have 2 or 3 committees that are going on at exactly the same time. And we have to split up. Okay, I'm going to get Judiciary Committee. I'm going to get Senate Public Safety. I'm going to get, Rev and Tax, and I'm going to get Assembly Public Safety or one of the other committees. And we split up the responsibilities on the various bills, and we go and we represent all sides. I can't tell you how many times I said on behalf of the California Rifle and Pistol Association, the National Rifle Association, National Shooting Sports Foundation, I represent gun owners of California, and then I go on with my testimony. Rick's done the same thing. Dan's done the same thing. And that's how we get our stamp on testimony.
It's literally three of us fighting Brady, fighting Giffords, fighting Moms of the Man Action, fighting regional anti-gun groups who often flood the room. There have been times where, as Sam said, one of us is over covering something else, and there's two of us in a room, and we're the only two seats that aren't wearing a different colored shirt that belongs to the other side. We're the ones that have to get our voice, often in less time than we're supposed to have, because as Sam said earlier, there's several of them that play clock games and try to take the time away from you. And when you look at our success rate with so much stacked against us, it shows you that truth and perseverance can win the day many, many times. And then when you look at what we come in behind us, that a lot of what we're doing is setting up, like somebody said, well, you still lost this bill, whatever that bill may be. But what they don't understand is Sam, Dan, myself, and others have planted into those notes, planted into those oppositions, the very things that cause judges to say, no, you can't do that. It's unconstitutional. We literally are like that volleyball player that sets the ball for Michelle and Associates, the 2A Law Center, and others to come in and spike it. And if we weren't there, they wouldn't be able to.
Thank you very much for watching the entire video. I'm very grateful that you did. You can support GunGuyTV if you'd like to do that by joining GunGuyTV Crew. You'll get a lot of exclusive content I produce there that you can't get anywhere else, and you'll find that on either Locals or Patreon. If you're on either one, just look for GunGuyTV, or you can go to GunGuyTVCrew.com. There is a link in the description. Likewise, I own Practical Defense Systems, and that's the company, my company, and I guess it's my money, that sponsors GunGuyTV. So if you'd like to take a class with us, that helps me keep this thing going as well. Have a wonderful week. Thank you very much for all of your support, and look for the next and final segment of this interview coming up the next couple of days. In the meantime, wherever you go, whatever you do, stay safe.